All right. This is my second live stream like this, so learning the rules of the rope still. I think the idea is that we wait for folks to join, but also if you're watching this on a replay, means you have to wait a few minutes. While that happens, this is called No Code AI, prompts that create new building blocks. And I'm doing this because I've always loved to work in public. I love to share what it is that I'm learning as I build, because I think it's really hard to build great stuff on the web. And I've been doing it for 20 years now. And it's just fun to share what I'm learning. I don't think there's any harm in people learning lessons without having to learn them the hard way. And I feel like with building some AI tech into our platform, I've definitely learned some lessons, what to do, what not to do, what works well, and what doesn't. And it's definitely a pretty daunting thing to try to, to try to do. So I wanted to share what I learned, especially in the no code space. So I want to take you through the thought process, what we built, how we built AI into a product, and why it works. Hopefully, the why it works is valuable to y'all, especially as a sort of take home stuff. This is a live stream, so that means that this is going to be way too long if you were expecting it to be like a high and tight demo, webinar, that kind of thing. But it's too long because I couldn't figure out how to make it shorter. And that feels appropriate when I'm showing off LLMs. So we're just going to do as they do. And hopefully they're not offended by that. You're free to come and go. You can even put me in the background. I know it's 10:30 on a Wednesday, so I will not be offended if you put some windows over my face and just listen to me talk. I won't even know that you're doing that, so even better. And I'll tell you when to Alt Tab back so you can see the exciting stuff, or you can just watch this again sometime. So let's start. Thank you for everyone that joined. I invited I think everyone I could think of. If you're here because you know me, that's awesome. If you're here because you saw it on LinkedIn or Twitter, that's awesome too. I appreciate it. There is the ability to converse. I think if I open up chat, I see a hey Matthew from Daniel. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for confirming this works. Thank you, Daniel. So yeah, say hello, ask questions. This can be Socratic, and what my nerd self means by that is that as I share what I've learned, I would like to learn from you too. So teach me. I play a AI skeptic on the internet only because I think that it's something we're still trying to understand what it's good for and what it's not good for. And I think a lot of us are diving headfirst into it, and hey, we're going to learn. But the skepticism just comes from, is this really the best use of it? And I want to share what I've learned so far. So, no code AI, prompts that create new building blocks. Let's go. So, the first area I want to cover is just design thoughts. So, definitely, as I approach any problem in product, I like to think of, who is this for and what are they really trying to do? And actually, I'm going to take a step back. This is a live stream, so I get to do this. Who am I talking to today? I already said what I want to share, but who am I talking to? I think I'm talking to two groups. One is if you are a no coder, it's right on the tin, as they say. It's obvious why you might be interested in this. Let's talk about no code and AI, what AI is doing for no code in the space, what it's not doing yet, what we wish it would do. That's definitely a track here, a mental track. The other one is talking to product developers, platform developers who are figuring out how to incorporate AI into their own products, maybe already have. Those are two different audiences. I'm going to do the dangerous thing and try to speak to both. I am both myself. I am a no coder. I am a founder and I'm a product developer. So I'm just speaking from each of those hats that I wear on any given day. And I think it's fun to have the group together. So thanks for being here. Let's talk about design. Whether you follow ShapeUp or whatever your favorite methodology is, I hope you have a step in that. I trust you do. Where you just try to think through what problem do we want AI to solve for us, which is to say, what problem do we want AI to solve for our customers? And for us, as it says in the H1 here, we are a no-code platform that's focused on helping customers build triggers, actions, and models that extend what's possible inside of platforms like Zapier, et cetera. And the reason that we care about this so much is that we think it's a little ironic and frustrating that if you are a no-coder and you use tools like Zapier, Make, et cetera, they're awesome until you get to a point and then you want to do something, and there's always that wall that says you have to code something, you have to build an app, you have to build an extension, you have to write some JavaScript, you have to write some custom code. And that's unfortunate because obviously you're a no coder, and the reason you're here is because you don't write code, or at least you don't think that's the most efficient way to get things done. And we'd like to break that limit. We'd like to. That's why we call it jailbreaking no code. We don't want to be stuck on other people's roadmaps. We want to build cool stuff now that helps our businesses create more value, get it done, and not have to learn how to code. So a lot of times we're stuck with those platforms. Stuck is maybe a harsh word, but we're using those platforms. We got a bunch of stuff set up. We're not leaving. So we need to make them better somehow. And that's what Summit's all about. So we can enhance the work that you already do inside those tools without having to leave them. So that's what Summit is. And Summit, I'm going to log in now and kind of start showing you around so you can get an idea of the problem we're trying to solve for customers. So Summit is a tool where you build what are called models. We don't build apps, we don't build workflows, we build models. And models are a little different because, again, the concept is these are things that you run inside of workflows. So if you build workflows, they're the little nodes, they're the steps, they're the actions and the triggers that are inside your workflows. We want to help you build those. And that means that you are composing something from scratch. So it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that the problem we're trying to solve for our customers is that, terrible blank slate problem that we're all familiar with, which isn't a lot of products, by the way, but especially products like document writing, composing, programming, things like that. Video will be a thing too, I imagine, of, let's auto create a little starter video for someone. And so it's really powerful. Summit's powerful, but the start from scratch problem is really difficult because this is terrifying, and this is every sort of onboarding person and founder's nightmare is how do we get somebody to be productive when they're staring at this? So that's the problem that we've always wanted AI to solve for Summit, is not staring at this. One thing we did try in the past is templates. I think templates are a common go-to solution for the blank slate problem. I think they can work. I will also say, speaking from my own experience, that templates are, I feel like they're always 70% correct. And sometimes less than that. Sometimes they're just not correct enough. And the reason is for a template to work, you actually need the structure to make sense to the person, which means that I'll give you an example here. So we have snippets. Okay. These are basically mini templates that you can use. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to say, I have a blank canvas. I want to add a web request to my model. I'm going to click, I'm going to place it on the canvas. That's cool. Got a direct dopamine hit, if you will. I made a web request to this placeholder site. Thank you. Thank you for your service, JSONplaceholder.typecode.com. And I got back some data. And this is cool. These are fake emails, by the way, YouTube and others that are scanning my content for violations. And this is great, but this is almost never what somebody actually is needing to accomplish inside of your tool. So whatever they're building, you can give them a snippet of value, you can give them a template, but there's always the step of, I need to make changes. Now, if you're lucky, and all they actually have to do is change this URL, and change this email to something else, maybe you win. But we all know that luck is not a strategy, and have it depend on them just needing to tweak a template. I would say in my experience, it just fails most of the time. It gets people something on the page, but then again, they have to change it. And this is sort of the first key insight, I would say, that I took away from our AI endeavors here, is that for templates to work, and what we want AI to do for us instead, is we need a structure, right? We need the user to create a structure that is close enough to what they're trying to build. Why? Because people who are composing new things, whether it's Python code or Summit code or a no-code workflow, if they don't understand the structure of what they're looking at, they are stuck, right? Meaning they can make topical changes, they can make little changes to, like, oh, I figured out I need a post, not a get. But if you need to reroute things, you need to refactor things, templates are not the solution, because a template is for somebody who doesn't understand the structure. So what we're hoping AI will also do is not just solve the blank slate problem, but do it in a way that satisfies this long tail of structures that someone may have in mind of, I want to create something novel, new, the structure, I don't know how to make it structurally. Can you give me something where I just change the text, right? That's the dream. And so I think this was the challenge. This is the problem. As I said, we tried templates before and they didn't work. And so we wondered, really, can we use AI to basically compose templates on the fly? And templates that don't require any structural changes, but you just type, the prompt contains enough of that information from the user. That's what they know how to do, right? They know how to compose a prompt, or hopefully. Uh, and then can we take that and turn that into a structure? So let's look at some simple examples here. I will also say, just from a design standpoint, that it helps to understand where the market is. So, you have customers who come to your product and they want to use no code, or they want to use AI, right? More and more companies, customers, partners, competitors of yours have AI in their products. And so for me, what I did is I started to go around and just kind of look at the other tools in the space, and what they offer in terms of AI. So obviously, a very dominant player in our space, at least, is Zapier, and what they offer at the top, at the top of every Zap these days in the canvas is basically choose your own adventure. You can either build a trigger and an action from scratch, which is sort of their less than blank slate, or you can type something into the top, right? And we can give that a try. Said I have a Google sheet I would like to fetch and parse. This is a problem I have. I don't know how to do it. I think Zapier can help me, and I can run that. And so yeah, this is what happens. It says hang tight, right? Can you please specify what kind of data you want to fetch and parse from your Google sheet and what you would like to do with the parsed data? Okay, so I'm basically in a chat interface. And again, I'm just kind of getting a feel for overall what are the modalities, what are the types of interactions that others in my space are offering people. So this is a chat, and it's basically asking for clarifying information. So kind of put a pin in that. It's interesting. That's where we go from there. Another player in this space is Make. I can give it the same prompt. Let's do that just to be completely sort of parallel here. So I can go into Make and say, okay, let's create or edit a scenario. I clicked AI Assistant. It says, great, I can help with that. Here's an example of a prompt. Mentions Google Sheets. That's promising. Cool. I'm going to give it the same prompt and see what happens. I have a Google Sheet I would like to fetch and parse, and says, here it is. So I've got Google Forms. Okay. So I've got created one node for me, Google Forms, which is not the same thing as Google Sheets. I guess it's telling me I need to use Google Forms. So that's interesting. I mean, I can keep chatting with it. I don't want to use Google Forms and see what happens. Maybe I'm being rough on it, but again, I'm just sort of testing out what's available. Oh, that's cool. So it automatically updated and said, okay, how about Google Sheets instead? And you can send that to something in JSON here. So we're getting closer. So again, chat interface, interacting from a prompt. That's cool. Another player in our space is HubSpot, just from the sense of we have a lot of customers that use HubSpot. It's obviously a growing monster in the CRM space, and I mean that in the best way. And so it doesn't really make sense to ask HubSpot to work with a Google Sheet, but we can say, if I'm a no coder, I can say I want to import leads from a Google Sheet, and we can see what happens. Seems like that's something I should be able to do with HubSpot if I have leads in a Google Sheet. Let's see what it does. So it's kind of composing an answer. It's thinking, ChatSpot does not have the functionality to import leads. You can manually add leads using the object add tool. There we go. If you need further assistance, let us know. Okay, so I kind of got punted back. And then ChatGPT, the ultimate Swiss Army everything for this. I can say, I have a Google Sheet I would like to fetch and parse. I'm not a coder, so let's make sure it knows I'm not a coder. So we're just going to go here. This is always good to sort of barometer test yourself or measure yourself against the true giant in the space. And it says, cool. Okay, you can use no code. So apparently Google Sheets has some built-in functionality that works with it. I can write some scripting stuff in Google Sheets, etc. So this is what I did kind of first, is just look across the space and see, what are others doing. Obviously, the chat UI is popular. And I think the reason the chat UI is popular is it was obviously the breakthrough, right? And I think we can look at ChatGPT as a bit of a test of what do you see when you see it. Do you see a omniscient oracle that can answer any question about anything? Or do you see it as a generator that's able to create things, right? And I think the first one is sort of the Google mindset of it's basically chat interface into a Google omniscient oracle. It's going to answer my questions. And so even looking back, I can look at ChatSpot and say, like, this is kind of that approach. This is an oracle. It's omniscient. It knows everything about my HubSpot data and installation. It's going to give me answers, right? I think Make and Zapier, being no-code tools by nature, are really AI as generator. And it's interesting because there is a chat interface here, which is a helpful, release valve. But the goal that we have with the LLM or the AI in this tool is not to chat with us. And it's not even necessarily answer our question. It's to build something. And that something we build actually answers the question. So, for Summit, we look at this and I say, okay, I like chat. I like the ability to ask something questions. But at the end of this process, this workflow within our own product, where do we want people to get to? And I don't think it's the answer Oracle style. I think it is, can you generate something that can produce the answer? So we're talking about code generation. So in that sense, Summit's need for AI, as I kind of zero in on what we want users to be able to do, it's more like Copilot or a code generation tool inside of an IDE, which is we're going to generate something that can give you the answer, and ChatGPT can do that as well, obviously. So if I come into ChatGPT and say, write this as Python, it'll do that. The problem is I have a little bit of a catch 22 here where I'm not a Python developer, so I can't do that. I'm not a developer. So kind of look at this and it doesn't know sort of the language of no code, if you will, other than just to tell me to go use the tools. It's helped me with Google Sheets. So this is kind of the lay of the land. And I think just sort of the takeaways and lessons on the design front is, again, what are people in your space doing? Are they treating LLMs as oracles or as generators? Maybe both. And then which do our customers need us to do for them, right? Do they need us to just create this omniscient being, or do they need us to give them something that it knows a lot, right? But the purpose of it knowing a lot is to generate something that I can then use elsewhere. So yeah, that's kind of the show and tell. I want to get into now like a simple example. So let's now look at Summit. I promised a bit of a demo here. So let's look at Summit's version of this. I'm going to pass in a prompt and I'm going to ask it to do the same thing and see what we ended up coming up with. So again, this is a live stream. This is production. If things break, hallucinations, but let's go ahead and click create with AI. And so what we have here at the top to slow down again is start from scratch is obviously one action we can take. Create with AI is the new action, put it in blue. We'd love for folks to click it and put in a prompt. So we have a couple examples and I'm just going to paste in this. Now, this has a little bit more detail than the other prompts I put in. I actually have put this prompt into those other tools before and it doesn't help. In fact, it's a little bit too much information, but in Summit's case, I'm going to give it enough information to take it further down the line. So I have a reservation CSV file. So let's look at this. So real business case here. I want to create some value. I'm a property manager. This is my favorite example. If you've watched other demos of mine, I'm a property manager for an Airbnb and I run a rental property. It's a ski lodge or it's someplace. And we have reservations stored in a Google Sheet because we're a small business and we're keeping it simple. So this is our reservations upcoming. We've got a status column when people are checking in, when they're checking out, their email and their name. Again, all fictitious. YouTube gods and DMCA folks or whatever you are now. And yeah, what we want to show here is what I want to do here. What my goal is as the user of Summit is, can you help me build something that filters out just the confirmed guess, right? I want that information out of this Google Sheet because I want to use that in some kind of automated workflow. So I come back in Summit. This is where I pasted my prompt. I'm going to hold my breath and click generate. And it builds that. And it built this without having to do what? I didn't have to click the filters, the snippets. I didn't have to learn how the structure works. It built something and I can run it and see what happens. I got a 200 in terms of the code coming back and I didn't get any data. So now I'm going to inspect it. And what we also did, and this is kind of a lesson learned, is when the AI runs, and I want to show you a minute like what we ran this off of. It's pretty stock GPT, which is a whole nother topic. We'll get to that. When it runs, it actually generates a bunch of interesting information. It understands our language and our coding environment enough to say something interesting, which can, again, help that user. So we used to create templates where we would actually write out, hey, this is what you're looking at. This is what you see. We now have GPT automatically. It automatically already describes what the heck this thing is and how it works. We're taking that. We don't want to lose that. So we're gonna wring that out, if you will, and we place it into a text box here. So we actually have it document the template for us and place it right onto the template. If you want to, as a user, you can read these. You can get comfortable with how the heck it works. There's another thing we do, though, is that we also have a step where we do a code review. And I want to show you how that works too. Obviously, running any of these things once is good. Running them twice, as we know from real world experience, is even better. So we do a code review and we actually say, hey, you just made this template. See if you can find any errors or bugs in it. Now, it didn't find an error or bug because my prompt wasn't specific, but I'm going to go ahead and click into each of these and see what's happening. So this is the CSV file. I'm going to add a little debugger step here, which is a Summit node or step that allows me to see what's going on inside the data. You can see the database table did come back, which is a CSV file, but it looks like my query is returning nothing. I'm going to confirm that here. So yes, the query is nothing. The reason the query is nothing, I can click it, is using SQL syntax, and I can see that it says confirmed is all title case confirmed. If I look back at my CSV file, you can see that that's not how this is written. So I could change this in a couple ways. I'm just going to change this by typing confirmed in the title case instead and see if that fixes it. And it did. So what we built is we built a tool that, again, prompt to building block. Now, why is this a building block? Because if I want to, and I'll go ahead and take that step, I can set this live. And as I set that live, I'll just remind myself and remind us of what the goal was here. It was to build something that builds templates automatically. And the success criteria was it needs to be usable enough that the user can just come in and change a piece of text, perhaps at most, and get it to work. So no structural changes required. So to me, this one succeeds. And if in the future, what would be smart of us to do is say, this worked, add this to the library of things that work, and reinforce and fine tune the model, right? So again, getting ahead of myself, but that's something we could do. But I'm pretty happy with this. I had to change one word. It'd be better if it just worked. We're gonna do more examples here. I set this live, however, and the reason I did that is I'm going to show you, we called this building blocks. If I come into the endpoints, by clicking set live in Summit, I have automatically published this as an API. So this has an endpoint. This is a reservation filter is what it's called. GPT also automatically created the name and the description for it. And the name of the description was reservation filter. And what we did, feel free to steal this idea, is we put the prompt into the description field of the model. So, as a user, it's nice to have a running tally of your prompts that you've used. We had this sort of open field called description. It's not occupied by anything. Let's go ahead and use it. So we threw the prompt in there so that people can share these prompts with each other. They can remember the ones that worked, etc. So obviously, now, great question, Daniel, in LinkedIn. Have you somehow authorized with this G Sheet before? No, we haven't. We do have OAuth abilities on the platform to HubSpot, Salesforce, and Pipedrive to start. The way that we got around that here is that you can publish a Google Sheet and an Excel sheet, and sometimes even database clips from Heroku, et cetera, as a CSV file. So this is a live updating CSV file that will change every single time Google Sheets detects a change. So if this data changes, the contents of that CSV will change. And so if I change this to canceled, we should no longer see Richard Cervantes in this. There might be a slight lag, but I'll come back and I'll run it again in a minute and you'll see. So publish a CSV file. And that's how our table building block works inside of Summit. And I want to talk more about that too. But back to the building blocks piece. So yes, this has an endpoint. We believe that APIs and API endpoints are the building blocks of the internet. So when we say we want no coders to be able to create building blocks, we want them to be able to create a new API endpoint on the internet that anyone can use with an API key, of course. They can use from anywhere. And that's just the whole idea. And I think contributing more API endpoints and nodes to the ecosystem is how we build this thing up. Now, since I did set it live and it has an endpoint, it means I can come into Zapier here and I can actually use that, not as a trigger, but I'm going to use this as a filter. Actually, you can use Summit models as triggers as well, but I'm going to use this one as an action. And what this does is we call this our companion app. So our companion app in Zapier is called Models by Summit. It's still in private beta. Feel free to request access. But what this lets you do is it lets you choose the endpoint you want to work with, choose the data you want to get out. Now, there's a little bit of Greek speak here, so forgive me, but I happen to know this is called find one. It means we want to get just the data out that it returns. I'm going to come to the account. I'm going to choose the account I want to connect to. I believe it's this one. I just did that connection. If it's not, That's why we are live streaming this. And we'll come into action here. And now what this lets us do is it automatically loads up all of the, cool, that was it. So what our companion app in Zapier does is it automatically loads up all of the models that you've published inside of your Summit account. So what I now have access to is every time there's a new reservation, maybe that's coming from Google Forms, that triggers. If I want to run a filter, an analysis, some kind of anything in Summit, I can add a step and I can call it. And I have this drawer that just pops open with everything available to me. And you can see reservation filter is here simply because I click publish inside of Summit. So I'm going to click continue. And we're going to run this and we're going to see what data it gets back. There we go. And actually, fun enough, Richard Cervantes is not in here because, as I said, that caching cleared. So these are our confirmed status guests in that Google Sheet based on the query that I put into that building block in Summit. And that saved me, a whole lot of steps and clicks and time inside of building my app here. And not only that, but this is transferable, right? So if I want to call this endpoint now from HubSpot workflows, from Make, from N8N, from Python code, we have customers, and not to make it about Summit, but the reason this matters for us from a design standpoint is that we have customers that are using models from backends Python code. It's a way to build something. It's a way for business users to build something. And it's not a no code thing that you have to run inside a no code platform. It is an API endpoint, which means anybody at a company, anybody in the world can use it, right? So we are allowing no coders to contribute first class material, if you will, building blocks to the ecosystem. And now we have API. Now we have AI that can help them do that just by describing what they want. So, that's kind of the first example. I want to talk a little bit more about how and why this works so well. Because I think the fact that you can just change a word and it works, and I got there without any clarification, I think it's achievable. And I want to share kind of what allows it to work in Summit. So the thing to understand, or the thing I took away from this, is that when you're building AI into your product and platform, I think the question that we answered before was, are we composing answers or are we composing things that generate answers? Okay. If we're composing answers, it's a search problem, maybe in disguise, if you will. Big time vector database looks up, search, etc. I mean, it's not a solved problem. AI can definitely is the answer in many, many ways to that. Retrieval, augmented generation, etc. In our world, that's not what this is. This is different, and I want to show you how it works. This is GPT using a small bit of data about Summit and its language and how it works on the inside to compose this model on the fly. And so let's kind of get into the guts a little bit here. So this is what we call our cell training file. This is in GitHub. When I clicked that generate button a minute ago, this file got grabbed by Python. So we did write some backend code, not no code, in order to do this. But we go back here and we say, grab this file, ingest it, and add this as a system prompt. So this is something where I got a lot of help from my friends, which was, hey, but do I need a ton of resources, something huge? Do I need to fine tune a model? What do I need to do? Didn't need to do any of that in our case. This is a 260 line, including these lines that are just comments, file that sufficiently teaches GPT everything it needed to know about our product, our environment, our platform, to compose that on the fly that you just saw. So that is how simple it can be. Now, I will say that this works for Summit. Why? Because Summit is on the back end. Somebody recently called it a no-coder coders language, or a no-code code. It is a collection of building blocks. And those building blocks are very, very generic and flexible. But I don't think you have to be that, right? This could be a configuration file. This could be a flexible layer that you add to the API endpoints you have within your product or platform. But you have to give, this is what I learned, and this is, this is what got me really excited, is that if you give GPT the building blocks it needs to build, it can do amazing things. If you don't, right? And I feel like a good metaphor is the chef in the kitchen, right? You can have Gordon Ramsay in your kitchen, and if all you do though is label the cabinets and say this is where to find information, but you don't give him utensils and you don't give him any ingredients, or you give him limited ingredients, there's just not a lot he can do. And I think a good sanity check is, if you want to bring AI into your product and have it do something worthwhile, if a reasonably ambitious user can't do it, maybe even one that has access to, your backend code base. If they can't do it, AI is not a magic bullet in that sense, right? Like it's got to work with the things that you give it, right? And if the more flexible your architecture is, the more flexible your backend is, the more it's going to be able to work with. And if you don't have that flexible layer, I think the best thing that you can do, again, I'm just speaking from like my entire year of experience here or whatever, um, is to invest in that flexible backend layer, right? That sort of, what is its sandbox? What is its working environment? So for us, it's these building blocks called request, object, parser, table, matches. These are the building blocks for a language. And what I did with this file is for each one, I gave a dictionary definition, giving it the code that it needs to use, told it what it does, what the input output is, and gave it some examples, maybe some little notes, and then moving on, right? So it turns out with 11 of these, you can compose a lot of different things. And, we only have 11 building blocks. It doesn't sound like a lot, but kind of going back to the Unix philosophy, and I freaking love this quote. It's be generous in what you accept and be strict in what you send. Okay, so you think about the utilities that make entire operating systems possible. It's things like grep, it's things like ls, it's things like cat, right? Awk. What are these things really good at? They're really good at taking in streams of all kinds of crazy data, and then they're really good about giving you predictable output, right? And on the back end, sort of architecturally, when you're building something here, when you design these pieces or these things you want GPT to work with, the more forgiving and flexible they are in terms of what they take in, and the more rigid they are in terms of what they return, GPT will be able to assemble those in a way that is far more sort of combinatorially interesting than it would otherwise. So it can then assemble whole sentences, right? Like you just saw, that are just much more powerful. Now, one other thing we did in here is I added a code review step. So I learned after running this a couple times that it failed on the first shot, not surprisingly, kind of that zero shot rag with this 200 something line file. So I went through and I said, look, this is 13 lessons that you need to know, code review, right? Where we run it once. I then load up a different system prompt and say, you are a code reviewer, right? These are the rules of the road. This is what you're aware of. Please look back at this code and revise it with this in mind. And I would say this catches a ton of mistakes that it would make otherwise, which is great. And actually, you can see that in the results that get printed out. So syntax errors, hallucinations, etc. A lot of these just get fixed by the code review step. And at the bottom, we gave it some full examples of files so that it's not completely contextually clueless. So, so those are some examples. I'd love to do. Let's do another. So feel free to send me questions. I'd love to do another more complex example of composing something here with Summit using this new feature. Again, if it falls in its face, this is a live stream. I will fix it, or I'll try. But feel free to send me questions. So let's go in here and build something more complicated. So again, create with AI, and I'm going to copy paste this. Now, I happen to know this prompt isn't going to work at all if I give it to other tools. So I'm going to skip those, but I can go in here to GPT and say, can you build? So my last company was a weather company. I have a soft spot for the weather. Group in Florida. Crazy, crazy weather. Lightning capital of the world, actually, Pinellas County. Can you build a weather forecasting API for Breckenridge, Colorado? Please use the National Weather Service. Now, I add that little part at the end because I don't want to use open weather data or something else that requires an API key or a paid service. So I'll just hit enter, give this to the grand poobah of generative models here and see what it does. And it says we'll use Python. Not surprisingly, my favorite language too. I get it. So it's going to give me this whole thing, and obviously a lot of work. So I'm sitting here going, we run this Airbnb. Maybe it's on the coast. Maybe it's in the mountains. I'd love to have a little friendly, hospitable little weather forecast that gets sent by text to my guests at a certain time of day based on their preferences, which I'm storing in Airtable or something. And, depending on what time of day you'd like your little weather report, we're going to summarize the weather for you. I'm not going to install a Python module. I'm not going to set up a Python environment. I'm not going to do all this. I can't. I'm a no coder. And frankly, even if I'm a coder, this seems like a lot of effort for something that should not be so difficult. So let's throw this one in Summit and see what happens. So we're going to build, hopefully a more potent model. And just so in case there's any cache, I'm going to bust it by saying thank you. We do cache these based on the prompt and the user. So obviously not across users, but prompts and users. So if a user enters the same prompt twice, there's no reason to make another call, assuming they were happy with it, determinism, all that good stuff. If they weren't, they can add their own thank you. So let's click generate. Again, not entirely sure how this is going to go, but we'll click this. Little friendly text there on the button just to say stuff is happening. We don't stream back the responses. Decided not to. We're using GPT-4 Turbo. So it actually works pretty well and pretty quick. And again, we're looking for something that's structurally correct. Might require a few changes to the text, but we'll see what we get. And then we'll extend it. So it takes about a minute. There are timeouts, obviously, on the internet as well. So I'm hoping it takes less than a minute. If I keep making that training file bigger and bigger, there's a risk that we end up exceeding the length of time that it takes to generate these. So, but hopefully we're good. See what happens. In any event, cool. Okay. So in any event, that was faster than following those GPT instructions, and let's see how far we got. So explanation of how the code works. You notice it says revised code because the GPT, this was revised code. This wasn't the original case. Starts with a line, and I'll tell you why does it say shebang line? That's really weird. Tell you in a second. So model initialization, object declaration. I mean, this thing is walking me now through the code. And if I'm a no coder and I'm learning this is cool. I'm going to click just a sanity check and see if we stand a chance of this working. Forecast from forecast. Okay, let's give it a run, see what happens. Sweet. So with a prompt, we built an entire chain of function calls that we didn't have to write. We sent an object for the grid location for the National Weather Service. We're taking advantage of, GPT's omniscience, if you will. It knows the National Weather Service API because it's ingested and indexed all that. It knows, understands requests because we taught it that. It understands JSON parsers. This is a SQLite database that gets spun up in model. It understands all this. It just had to chain them together. And now we have a weather forecast. Now, obviously, we could also call this from Zapier if we wanted to. So I could come back in here. First, I need to set it live. So let's do a weather forecast here. Okay, we're going to set this live, and we're going to be able to call this from Zapier as well. And the cool thing is that I might have to do a little bit of data work, but let's see how we can maybe navigate that using our no-code skills instead. So same thing. Let's say this is a trigger. You know what, though? We have a trigger here, and Summit has its own triggering component called Schedule by Summit. Actually has way more options than the Schedule by Zapier component. You can do almost anything, even cron expressions. Side note, Schedule by Summit is actually built using Summit models. So this is a no code. This is actually powered by no code. So all of this scheduling logic and triggering is also no code. Again, we don't believe in having to write code to improve no code platforms. So let's, but we don't want to do, we want to do every day. So we want to keep it simple. And we're going to say this is every morning. Again, I could even fetch, fetch start today, pick the hour of the day. We're going to do whatever. People are getting up and going skiing. That's early. So 7 a.m., they get to read their forecast while they're having their oatmeal. And we'll do it at 7:10. And this thing doesn't end. And there's no maximum number of runs. And the time zone is, we're in Colorado. So that's Chicago time. So it'll actually adjust that 7 a.m. based on where they are. So this is set up and set up and running. Get a preview of when it's going to run. Next time it's going to run all that. Cool. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Love it. And now let's change this. So we don't have to change out the action. We can just change the change the Summit model we're pointing to. Refresh this because we just published that weather one, and hopefully it shows up in the list, and it does. So here's my weather forecast. Continue and test step. Now there's also a weather by Zapier built-in component, but I got to make this one. I got to point it at Breckenridge. I also got a full-length text forecast. I'm loving it better, so I'm going to use this instead. And there's my data, right? So, this is cool, but I think we can make it better. I'm gonna try to do an emerald here and kick it up a notch, and see if we can't pass this to GPT to summarize all of this in one text, because this is rough formatting, right? So we're not going to be able to pass all of this into a text message. This is 14 entries of an array of data, and I don't want to work with all that. That's too much. So let's see if we can go back into Summit and add another building block and simplify this. Now this is going to be a little bit of surgery here, so you're going to have to be patient with it. But let's go ahead and look at this. And I'm going to add a GPT step. So now a little more comfortable with this. I understand what's going on. I know that I want to add GPT at the end of this somehow. And we have a GPT step. So if I click GPT, I can add it to the page. And you can see that I get an incorrect API key error from GPT, which is understandable because I haven't put it in yet. So I will pull this out of my screen for a second, and I will add an API key, and then we'll get right back to business. And then after this, I'm going to show an example that's more of a business use case. We're going to connect to HubSpot and show you how we can use these use this AI ability and widgets to add value to HubSpot workflows. So feel free to ask questions. Now is a great time to interrupt me, but you're not interrupting. Like I said, this is for you and us. Bob Ross style here. Just some happy trees. All right. Cool. Put in the API key. I can bring this back in, and you'll see something else is that when I drop this prompt snippet, right? So I did take advantage of the left-hand side here. When I drop this prompt snippet onto the page, it had some pre-filled stuff. Okay. So again, bias for Austin, Texas. These are wrong though, right? So this is the system prompt. And you can see it eagerly already ran the thing. So GPT ran, right? So I just added GPT to my no-code model. If I publish this again, I get back something about why people love Austin, Texas, which can't argue with that. But that's not what we want, right? So we want to change this. So instead of you are an intelligent, helpful assistant, we're going to say you are an avid skier and amateur weather forecaster. Let's keep it simple, right? Please let our guests know what to expect in the weather in the coming days. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to just send a text. Looks like it was sent from us, and the context is going to be the weather forecast, right? So we're going to have to get that weather forecast data in here somehow. But I'll just kind of add a little preamble that says this is the official forecast, okay? And we'll leave that blank. Now, when this runs, it'll come back and say, hey, could you give me that official forecast? As an AI, I don't have access to that information. If you'd like to provide it, please do. So we are now in a development loop, which is, we're getting the answers. They're just not the answers we want. And now our job is to fix those broken answers. So let's do that. So we have weather data. It's in one of these. In fact, it's in this response right now. And so what we want to do is we want to get that into something else instead. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to store this. Let me get this into a text object. Give it a bunch of text. That probably makes sense. So we're going to do text. Text is another object that Summit has natively. And we're going to do text. And we're just going to say, this is going to be the results of that select forecast detail. And we're going to escape this. This is liquid syntax, which allows you to make text less violent in terms of interoperating with other systems. And you notice this went away because the text is no longer in the response. Let's send the text to the response and see what we get. And let's add that debug step again to do that so we can see output. And what we're hoping for here is that this text ends up in this response. So there it is. It is ugly. We've got these ampersands, pound signs, X's, and 27s, but that's to be expected because we escaped it, right? And we need to escape it before we feed it to GPT or it will get indigestion. So let's not do that to poor GPT. But this is good. And now we want to make sure that finishes before this prompt runs. So in order to do that in Summit, we can just drag this to here. And now I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Been torturing you all. Sorry about that. This is this. So we want to make sure that this weather text forecast thing runs before this prompt. And now it should. And let's make sure whether we don't want that. We actually want this text. So the way this works is I want to grab the title of this event and I'm going to feed into this. Now this is obviously Summit 201, but I chose to kind of make this model better. And in order to do that, I had to learn a little bit, but I'll show you in a minute why that might not necessarily be true. So what I just did is I just popped the text from this forecast data into the prompt. And now in theory, it's going to GPT. And now it's going to summarize that for us. So let's see what GPT does. It's definitely thinking for longer than it was before. Makes me think the prompt changed, which is a good sign. And we're going to come back here. By the way, usesummit.com. If you want to try this out, we have a free developer tier. Just request access. We'll get you in. We are doing onboarding calls. But if this is interesting to you, please sign up. So hopefully GPT doesn't completely die on that request. And it was a lot of weather data. We could shorten it, actually, if you wanted to. Cool. We didn't have to. GPT says, hello, everyone. Here's the weather forecast for the upcoming days, today, et cetera, et cetera. So this might be too long for text messages. Enjoy your activities and stay safe. I mean, it made it like, this is totally the guy that delivers your skis, right? I mean, this is great. He just happens to also be an amateur meteorologist. So now I have something that I can use in Zapier more easily in that workflow. And so I'm going to publish this, set this live, and we're going to try to use it again. Okay, so we're going to come back into our Zap and say, sweet, let's go back to this. We're going to retest this step, and we should get a different result, a better result. Now, it might take a while because we're going to run GPT again. Depends on caching and all that. But we should get back that text. And then the good news is now, obviously, that block of text is something that I can use from, an actual, or I can use in order to send an email or an SMS, right? Depending on what SMSs let you do these days lengthwise. This might time out just because I don't know if Zapier is going to like how long this is taking. Yeah, it did time out. So what we're going to do is, I think the reason it timed out is it's just a lot of data to ingest. So we're going to actually shorten this weather forecast. Actually, what we can do is we can shorten the prompt. So we already know that this forecast response is text. There is a truncate step that's in liquid syntax. So we're going to say truncate liquid syntax. And what this is going to let us do is we can actually choose. This is one of the fun things about using real, established languages. We can choose how long we want this to be. So I can basically prompt trim here on the fly and just give it less data to analyze. And that's going to make the whole thing run faster. So weather forecast response, that's a bunch of text. We're going to truncate this, and I'm going to say, we aren't going to be able to go out as far, but that's all right. Maybe it's just a daily forecast. 20 words is definitely not enough. We'll go 150 words and run that. And again, it's going to take a minute to run. While this does this, happy to answer questions, talk, but yeah, this is Summit. Is there any of you all building AI into your products now and have questions or want to share what you're learning? Feel free to plug yourselves. Okay. GPT says, in the coming days, skiers can look forward to a variety of weather conditions. Awesome. Okay. But it's 74 degrees. So, I should probably have the schedule thing terminate on the last day of skiing, which is usually around April 30th, if I remember correctly. Sweet. But this would be great. This would be great in the winter. So let's go back here and we're going to retest this step. And now that we're truncating, did I republish? I did not republish, I don't think. I'm going to click it anyway. Set this live. Shorter version. Gonna guess. Sweet. Okay, we got it. So now I have this really friendly block of text that I can just use inside of Zapier. So I can do the next step, which is, hey, some guests will be notified by email, maybe someone SMS. Again, I can't tell you exactly how long an SMS is allowed to be, but these days, 140, 280, infinity? I don't know. But now I can send an SMS, and of course I can come in here. I don't have an account. Well, actually Zapier allows you to send stuff to yourself, which is cool. And I can choose a from number and go ahead and type in this message. So now what I want to use is I want to use that weather forecast as the message and send this to myself and test. Who's this going to go to? I think it knows to go to me. That's the from number. Let's test it out. I don't know if this is going to work. If it does, I'm going to hold it up to the screen and it's going to be fun. That's the from. I'm not sure who this went to. I'm going to check. If it doesn't come to me in a second, I'll check who this is actually going to. I think it's under account here. Change. Oh yeah. Connect a new account. I'm going to connect my own cell phone number. I mean, this will be way cooler if we finish the loop, right? So let's just finish. So 2 number is going to be me. And I'm going to put this in. Confirm by SMS or call. SMS definitely. Send pin. Cool. Let's get registered. And it's cool that Zapier has this built in, obviously. So if you just want to send stuff to yourself, demo, testing, whatnot, you're covered, which is awesome. And oops, they don't want me to text that back. 20. Never share this with anyone, including your bank. Sweet. Okay. So that should be confirmed, and I'm going to retest this. All right. Hey, if you want to call me, if you see my number, you want to call me, go for it. We're friends. Okay, cool. So now I did say test step, and yeah, hopefully this comes through. Awesome. All right. So, oh, for everyone's benefit, here's the weather forecast for the upcoming days. Okay. So we went from a prompt to saying, I want a weather forecast that's customized to a GPT, to a Zapier step, very simple Zapier, to a text message in, about 8 minutes. Right. So this is the kind of cooking with fire we want people to be able to do. Now let's kick it up yet another notch, because you're sitting here going, I don't really do weather forecasting as a thing for my business. Maybe you should. I mean, it's cool. A lot of money to be made in weather forecasting, turns out, if you're a commodities trader. But back to the show. So let's do this. Let's do another one that's more businessy. Okay. So let's go HubSpot. Okay. See if if they want to field this one, a real business use case. So I'm going to put in, my sales VP is worried that we're closing deals too slowly. What is the average age of deals in the pipeline? Let's be a little more specific. We use HubSpot. Now we're going to say we use HubSpot because Summit is not a HubSpot only product, of course. So we need to be specific. We do have OAuth connections though to HubSpot, Salesforce, and Pipedrive. I'm going to click generate. And again, there's always a little bit of hallucination chance. I will say one fun comment about hallucinations. In building this, I also learned that hallucinations are actually not a terrible thing in testing. So oftentimes when GPT is composing something that you expect your users to compose, when it hallucinates because it doesn't know you can't do certain things, it's basically teaching you what a reasonable person would actually expect your thing to be able to do. So there was one example where it kept adding, when you do a date filter in Summit, it kept adding the ability to add and subtract days from that date. That's not supported by Liquid Syntax out of the box, but it's a cool idea. And I liked it enough that I said, shoot, we should have that filter in Summit. So I added it. And now when it hallucinates, it actually is just creating value. So, if you think of your AI tooling as, what somebody reasonable is trying to do inside of your tool, and you kind of give it that little bit of loose leash, it may actually do things and create things and break the rules in a way that, it doesn't know it can't do that. So you can fill your roadmap with, some nice little truffles, if you will. All right. So this finished. Again, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to run it though and see what happens. So what this is, let's kind of go through what this is doing. This is it automatically created, because it knows the HubSpot API, right? It automatically created the query parameters that go to the HubSpot API. Because it knows the HubSpot API, it also automatically populated the correct endpoint to look at deals in HubSpot. Now, proxy, this is a connection type that we have in Summit. You can see the HubSpot logo. This is built in. We also have Salesforce and Pipedrive. And parse dates. So it knows that the created date value is stored under properties for each deal that comes back from this response. So again, we're leveraging the omniscience, but we're giving it building blocks that it can use to do that in a deterministic or predictable way. And this might work. I mean, I ran it already and this did not come back. So let's see what happens. I'm gonna run it again. Let's see what happens. So let's debug this a little bit, and it might be the create date. So again, debugging in Summit, you just basically place a thing on the board called debug, and you can just send any building block to it, and I'll show you what's inside. So this parse dates one is not happy. That tells me that it looks like, okay, so it did get back the data. So this is the data back, and it looks like this parse dates thing is wrong. So structurally, we're in good shape, but I am going to have to change something here. So parse dates as properties create date dot value. We don't need dot value actually. So I think we might actually just need to remove this. This is just create date, right? Okay. And now create date as average age. Okay. So we made a little bit of progress. I'm going to move this along. So again, deals table, did this come back? No, deals table isn't happy. So our SQL syntax is wrong. Table deals. Okay. Deals. We're just getting that. Yeah, we actually don't want to just create date. We want all the properties. There we go. Okay, so the little bit of thing there is if you look at this JSON data that was coming back, this is a list of objects that are in our database. And you can notice under here, what it was doing is it was saying it was just selecting the create date as a date. We don't want that. We actually want it to populate we can put all this data into a Summit database in the model. So just to slow down a little bit, because this stuff is easy to skip over. What this does is this is a HubSpot query. It's parsing out each of these property dictionaries. And what's nice is it returns a list of those dictionaries. And so we have one dictionary or one object per result. The table object inside Summit, it allows you to send it a list of dictionaries. And what it does is anytime it gets a list of dictionaries from any data source, a CSV file, headers, columns, right, rows, or the results of a parser expression, and like in this case, hey, I have a bunch of JSON, it turns that actually into a database table. And the cool thing about having a database table is you can just write SQL queries. And a lot of people speak SQL. GPT definitely speaks SQL. It speaks SQLite, as it's proving by having written this here. And so now I can look at this, and this works. So I can actually remove this. You can see the average age. So this is a demo account. You can see the average age is 482 days long. Now, those are of all deals in the pipeline. So that tells me that maybe closed won is shorter, maybe closed lost is longer, maybe some are just stagnant. Point is, it's a demo account, so that's obviously not what we really have. But we just got back the average age of all the deals in our pipeline. And that's kind of an omniscience thing, but we used GPT to be the author of the thing. And now I can reuse this. So I can publish this. I'm going to set this live. And of course, we could, once again, we could add GPT to it. We could get back more. We could just feed all of the deal data to GPT step and just say, write up a little summary for this so I can email it like we did in the last example. But instead, we publish this, and we are going to go now look inside HubSpot and see how we can use it from there. So we also have a companion app inside HubSpot, just like inside Zapier. If you want to use a Summit model or something you created in Summit using HubSpot workflows, you can. So I'm going to add a step in the workflow here. Down here, we can see the Summit option because I OAuth to HubSpot from my Summit account. And you can see I can choose the model to run. So average age of deals in pipeline. It doesn't actually take any input. Choose the field to extract. We actually automatically sniff out or detect what the data is that comes back. So average age query, I think that's the results. No, response average age. That's what we want back. So, hit save. And so this is a step in our workflow now. So if this was again, this is not exactly what you want, but if this was a workflow that did, automatic summarization of your pipeline or some kind of reporting function, you can add as many of these as you want to, obviously do this work. And there's one thing kind of saving for the end, but we're pushing up on time here, so I'll share it now. Let's say that you make this and it's really cool, and there's nothing proprietary about this model other than, hey, it works, and you want to share it. Because Summit is powered by a language in the back end, it can be represented as text. And so I can actually export or share this if I want to. Two ways you can do that. One is I can click generate link, and now I have a secure private link that I can share with anyone. So if somebody else has a free Summit account, again, we have a free developer tier. There you go. So if I click start from this model, this will actually copy this into my account. Now I already have one of these, but here it is again. Okay, so I just shared that with somebody. The other thing you can do, and what we're adding to, is that we want no code to have a open source library, if you will, of components and tools that you can use right off the shelf. So we are building up an archive on GitHub of models that are Summit models that you can just use off the shelf. And so if I come under models, this is our public repo, and I can link us to this here in the chat. Send. This is a list. So if I go under HubSpot here and I say, I don't want to even use GPT, I don't want to figure out the little bit of tweaking or whatever, that's fine. Come in here, grab something off the shelf. Here's deal summaries by age. Now, what do I do with this? Well, good news. There's a copy here. So I can just click copy. I can come back into Summit and I can say, I want to import a model. And I can just say, yeah, my HS model. And I can just paste it and import. Okay. And so now I have it. So that's two ways to get it. So we are going to build up a library of, and GPT is going to help us, a library of all of these common routines, analysis, queries, components, things that they're never going to be apps in the App Store, right? And they're not going to be Zapier apps. They're not going to be HubSpot apps, Make apps, but they are things that we want to know as business users. We are building up already a repository. And if you would like to help, I'll finish with calls to action. So if you'd like to help, whether you think this is cool and you just want to contribute models, please request access and you can help us do that. The other thing you can do is, I think there's a big opportunity here to build these. And if you're incentivized to do so, build amazing ones and put them out there to purchase. To me, these are no different than WordPress themes or any kind of other sort of digital asset, right? If you want to create these and publish them and share them, they're text files. So you can do that if you want to. We would love for there to be a marketplace for these. Or if you're an agency, build up an arsenal of 30 of these that are your own secret sauce and use those for your customers. So that's everything I've learned about AI in the last, let's say, a couple months. Next steps for us is fine tuning this model, feeding it more examples that it can learn from, and then experimenting with other LLMs. Right now, we're just using GPT-4 Turbo, but Llama is pretty cool. I tried Llama out yesterday. Problem with Llama is it hid all the URLs for privacy concerns, which that was kind of a poison pill. But I've heard that is just in the chat client. So perhaps over API, it'll be better. But I want to thank you guys again and gals for attending, for joining, for being here. It means a lot. And yeah, I'd love to share this more with you, kind of maybe do a Wednesday no code live or something, see if we can get in the habit. And in the meantime, check out Summit. Let me know if you have questions. And I genuinely appreciate it so much. Have a great day. See ya.